good to see you all this evening. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Alexander G. Lewis. I am the executive assistant to Harry Hawkins, as well as creative solutionist. So good to see you all this evening. We're looking forward to having a great time today. So you'll hear from a couple different people. You'll hear about the history of justified anger, and you'll get to see some familiar faces. And so as a side note, I met a new friend today named Gavin, and I'm looking to find him because I told him that I would point him out. He's right there. And he asked about giving, and I know we're gonna have time to share about this later, and this was not part of the script, but since he asked, for anybody who is interested, we do have a half sheet on your seat that has a QR code and that has additional information. So thank Gavin for that little caveat. But thank you all so much for being here this evening. And so to kick off the night, we're gonna open up with a skit. And the skit is gonna feature Dr. G, the president and founder of Nehemiah, and as well as Executive Vice President Harry Hawkins. And so the skit this evening is entitled Angry Translator. And so I'll be asking them a few questions that have been collected previously from audience members, and we will see two different responses to these questions about the Justified Anger Initiative. So we're excited for just a fun way to kick off the evening, and so we'll welcome up Dr. G and Harry Hawkins.
Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you and thank you so much for being here. Please give yourselves a hand for coming out on a cold December night to be a part. You know, Madison is an interesting place to live. And I love Madison, really, I do. And, but when you love a place and commit to it, it seems like you have the right to challenge it so that it can become its best self. But anyone who's worked in my shoes or area, particularly if you're a person of color, know that if you push the status quo too hard, if you challenge people too hard, people will get upset in Madison. And so to do this work, sometimes you have to walk on eggshells a little bit. So we stole this from President Barack Obama when he had an anger translator. I think he was at the press thing. And so this is my executive vice president, Harry Hawkins, but tonight, he's Leon. And I feel that in this type of work, we need to be at least bilingual so that we can speak to the raw truth of what's going on. And so there are times I've had to bite my tongue in order to not experience greater wrath in this community. And so, indulge us because we have not practiced this, so I don't know what Leon is going to say. For the purpose of this evening, I'm the kinder, gentler black guy.
And I'm going to be the angry one. So.
All right, and so our first question this evening is, do we still need to be angry? Can we change the name to Justified Action now?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Now, according to the periphery of my perception, I would think that this is probably a fair question considering that anger might seem like such a strong term, like I might come in your house and do something, I might come in your job and do something, but because anger is not merely destructive, I think it's all right to retain ownership of that word, ownership of my feelings. We can talk about justified action when we start acting. You can't give black people a couple $100,000, I'm sorry, I'm going into Leon. You can't give black people a couple $100,000 to do an effort and then say, go work while we watch. Aren't we actionable now? So, no, you know, to quote Jan Brady, not now, some other time. You have to be a 70s kid to get that.
Do we still need to be angry? I'm sorry, I didn't read the news today. I didn't know they canceled racism. So, I mean, what I want to know is, why are white people policing my emotions? How long, what's the timer on my anger? Like, ain't that about a biscuit? How you going to tell me when I can and can't be angry. What in the world? Like, who wrote that question? What? No. Ask me that.
And Leon, since you're on a roll,
okay,
and we got some of our friends here from the Wisconsin Partnership Program who funded us to take a look at the social impact of racism and microaggressions, so we know for a fact that black and brown people are dying more quickly than our white counterparts of the same diseases in this community. How can we not be angry about that, Leon?
All I'm saying is, it's questions like this that be killing us sooner than we need to. Ask me no foolishness about that. Worried about the anger. You know what's amazing to me? What's amazing to me is that we so concerned about anger. I wish people were that concerned about racism, right? Asking me no question like that.
Well, oh my. Question number 2. Why haven't we seen greater changes in racial equity in Madison over the past 10 years?
Well, we have to be patient in this line. We all mean well. I mean, we don't just wake up and say, I'm racist. I mean, I'm sure it was Looney Tunes that set you on that journey. I'm sure it was watching Our Gang and Little Rascals that might have given you pejorative pictures of stymie and buckwheat. Sure that there's no bad streak in your heart that would make you think that the jokes or the glass ceilings or your extremely male and homogenous boards and leadership teams. I'm sure that if you knew more of us, you'd like more of us. You'd hire more of us. You'd follow more of us. And so it takes more than a decade to really fix this because it's taken about a half millennium to break it. Right, Leon?
I love how somebody gonna ask why we didn't fix racism in 10 years. Like, what about them lakes? Why them lakes ain't clean yet, huh? Like, that's not even controversial. Everybody love clean water, but we still out there working to clean them lakes, get that phosphorus out. Ask me about some foolish about why we haven't fixed racism in 10 years. How much money do you think we got? Like, we ain't getting enough money to fix racism in a decade? You kidding me? Man, please. Have we seen more change? Have you changed?
See, Leon is making me mad. For 10 years, people have asked me, Alex, things are getting better, right? Things are changing, right? Do you have more black friends? Do you have more black staff? Do you have more black neighbors? Do you have greater sympathy? If you have to ask me if things are better, that's the best indication that stuff is still pretty messed up. I'll stay in my lane, Leon. I'm sorry, Leon.
Sound like the two are meshing a little bit.
It's contagious.
All right, so our next question is, I have a black friend who said that they don't agree with how Nehemiah is tackling these issues. How do you respond to that?
It's going to be a double Leon on this one. Go ahead.
Leon, why don't you go first?
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, here's the thing. I got a white friend who said green beans don't belong in casserole. How about that? Huh? How about that? I got a white friend who said you need more than salt on your mashed potatoes. What about that, huh? Tell me about your black friend. I got white friends. What?
Wow, it's hard to follow that up, Leon. Well, I'm certainly excited and celebrate the fact that you have found yet another black person who speaks for the entire black race and experience. In my 6 years of living, I have yet to find one black person who speaks for all of us, but how fortuitous it is that whenever you need to move into a status of, to a place of status quo, you find the one black person who can corroborate with your lack of desire to move. I can show you a black person or a white person, person from any ethnic background who still thinks that the world is flat, that we didn't go to the moon. Wait, there's still a lot of black people who don't think that. But you can't pick one person out to then determine what Nehemiah's work is. Your one white friend can't teach me how to be black and how to do the work in the black community. I need that friend to be honest about their experiences. And if they really thought that, why wouldn't they come and talk to me directly? Why are you the closest thing that they know to this movement? And why can't they come and join us to make it better if we're not making the change? But just because they say that to you doesn't mean that we don't know what we're doing. We're still relevant 10 years ago. Where's your friend?
Right. What he said.
Neon, you have anything else you want to add, or are you good?
Oh no, I think we dropped it on that. I mean, figuratively speaking, these mics are expensive, but you know what I'm saying? We can move on.
Well, can I, Leon's best me, can I just say one thing? One of the things that deflects and allows people, particularly from the dominant culture, to not address the issues that's really incumbent upon them to address is beginning to coach black people on how to do this kind of work. What this really grows out of is a sense that we don't know what we're doing, and rather than coming and telling us we don't know what the heck we're doing, go find a black person to come and say that. And if we all knew how to fix this problem, we wouldn't be in this pickle that we're in. Some of the greatest struggles that we had in pulling this together was not within the black community. People have asked me ad nauseum, how do you work with Michael? How do you work with Kaleem? How do you work with Lisa? How do you work with Keisha? How do you work? How do you work? There's a whole bunch of you white folks in here that don't like each other. East Siders and West Siders. West High grads and whatever else. That you don't have to be singular nor homogenous, but it is demanded that we march in step on everything, and we're not allowed to deviate. There's not one way of approaching this issue, and we need the other black influences to do what they're doing, but we don't need our white friends critiquing black movements while they stand still doing nothing but critiquing us. That has been some of the greatest pressure in this work, not from the black community, but from the woke community.
All right, question number 4.
Okay, I'm getting tired.
In teaching about white racism against black people, have we reversed it so that we now condone prejudice against whites? Shouldn't we instead ask our black brothers and sisters to be the best versions of themselves and forgive white people and systems constructed by white people?
Now, y'all know that's a real question, right? Y'all know. That's too true to even act like hypothetically.
Right.
Y'all took that from that letter I got.
We sure did. Just little Leon break. If you send us crazy emails, we will use your stuff in trainings.
Straight up, straight up.
Yes, we will.
Don't put it in writing. Leave us a voice message. Dial us up at 1-800-NEHEMIAH, press extension ignorant. But not our friends here. Y'all know we're not talking about you. You've gone through our history class. You are the, and I said this with sincerity, you are folks that have supported us and come along with us so that you understand these things or these issues. But before we can really look at what it requires to untangle all of these issues, the questions have come. Well, what about what you do against each other? But you take a look at wars around the world. I'm 60 years old, I have yet to hear about white-on-white crimes. And think about how many wars have been between white nations and white nations. Anybody got degrees in European history, medieval history? Come on, that was never called white-on-white crime. And just let us not agree on something, people get nervous. Oh, there's division in the black neighborhood. And so I think it's okay for us to stay in our lane and to work on empowering those who would be our allies. Because that was really the rub. The community really wanted us to go fix black people, thus competing with great black-led organizations who were doing great work in this community. That was not our role. And so when we said we want to work with people who would be allies and help them to understand the role in the history of systemic racism, people looked at us like this. They thought that was someone else's work. How can you draw that crowd and have the audacity to speak to folks about those things? Again, we were slapped on the wrist a lot for having the audacity to create a history class, to talk about these issues and to train non-black allies. But we knew that for this to work, we had to not only build capacity in the black community, but we had to also build capacity in the non-black community with those who wanted to work with us.
Everybody's like, how are you going to get angry after that? It's easy. It's all right. So here's the thing. This is not even a real question. This is a confession, okay? Whoever wrote this is more scared about them having to experience the same oppression that black people have experienced than they are about anything. Because here's the thing. How are you going to ask for forgiveness if you don't know what you're being, if you don't teach the history, how are you going to forgive somebody? That don't even make sense, right? So this question, look, basically this person telling me right now they're scared of being treated like a black person. Look.
And they should be, Leon. They should be.
Look. Let me get angry and academic on you for a second. Let me get angry and academic on you. I read a report that said that between 2019 and
I was called into a meeting with a medical professional from around the state, and they brought together folks who specialize in infectious disease, family practice, physicians, and they invited in a few black and brown, Native American, Latino representatives, Asian American representatives, to this is way back in the early part of the pandemic, to help the state make a decision on who was going to get a ventilator. I was depressed for 3 days. And this is when we had calls. This is before Zoom got popular. This is really during free conference call. When I listened to the criteria, hypertension, if you have diabetes, if you have other degenerative diseases that's based upon stress-related situations, you do not qualify for I promise you that this happened. I thought maybe I was hearing things incorrectly. Thank God that a very trusted physician from UW Hospital Systems sent me in. I used some of the data that we got from studying social determinants of health, and I talked about this, and I said, are you going to punish black and brown people for living punished lives? We are going to deal with all of these issues, and we have developed these degenerative diseases, and now these same diseases keep us from getting a generator. Fortunately, Wisconsin did not have to come to the point where they had to ration them, but the discussion was that. And when I hung up, I asked, how many conversations like that happen that we're not a part of? Folks were making decisions about ventilators, and the way it was shaken out, if you're from the Latinx community or the African American community, we were not getting ventilators. I promise you that took place. And it wasn't until we talked about social determinants of health. And so when we start looking at questions like this, we're not talking about systemic racism that just merely makes people follow me around the store when I'm shopping. We're talking about systemic racism that might mean or has meant that people who look like us don't and did get ventilators. And that makes me sick.
So our last question is actually just for Dr. G. Sorry, Leon. I was told you have to take a back seat on this one. But we will continue it later throughout the program.
Nobody put Leon in a corner. Nobody put Leon in a corner.
So Dr. G, this last question is, why are you focusing on systems change instead of helping people in the community?
That is such... Who relegated that responsibility just to black people? You know what?
Leon.
Mother. I can't wear them. Them glasses will get a brother fired. I'm going to get out of the way and let our guests help. answer that, all right? Because I'm tired because Leon is rubbing off on me, so I'm going to go someplace, get a drink of my tea. I'm going to let y'all talk about that, all right?
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. So thank you all. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Now we're going to have our panel discussion. So I'm going to invite our panelists and my co-moderator up. So we're going to introduce them. And, oh, there we go. So we have our Joe Lanus, who is the executive director of the Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra. And you all can come up. Yep, come on. You can come up while I'm introducing you. Yep. And that's Joe. This is Dr. Steve Salerno, who is the superintendent of Mount Horeb Area School District. So they're going to be joining us today as our guests. And joining me, co-moderating, is going to be Dr. Karen Reese, who is our director of research and education at Nehemiah. So, yeah. Oh, yes, please. Everyone needs a mic. You don't have to pass it. Thank you. Sorry about that. All right.
He's not Leon anymore, so you're safe.
Awesome. Well, the reason why we wanted to bring them up here was because one of the things that can be very challenging is trying to explain to people exactly what it is we're doing, right? Some of the work is very innovative. Some of the work is hard to measure, or we measure in a way that people aren't used to dealing with it. So part of what we did from outreach of our Black History for a New Day course is that organizations began to ask us, could we come and bring the course to them? Now, the course is a 9-week course that's designed for a specific purpose and audience. So what we did was we started doing cross-cultural leadership development work with different organizations, and the Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra and Mount Area Horeb School District were two of the organizations that we work with. And so we wanted to just bring up some of our partners to talk about how our systems work has impacted their work and them as people. So thank you all for joining us. Glad you could make it.
Thank you.
Thanks. So I'll start with an easy question, and either one of you can answer this. Yeah, they're laughing because they know it's not going to be easy. But how has working with us and working with Just for the Anger and going through our classes and trainings, how has that impacted the work that you do? So either one of you can jump in and go first. I won't put anyone on the spot, but.
Yeah, I'll go first. Good evening, and thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of this very special night. It's just an absolute honor to be here, and I thank everyone for their hospitality this evening. I've made some great friends, and Harry and Karen. In our school district, we needed to be thinking about systems. We needed to be thinking about all students, each and every single student who's entrusted to our care. And I happen to have the great opportunity to see this young man present at an event where all superintendents were there. And I went up to him afterwards and I said, hey, listen, I would really love to partner with you. I'd like to learn more about you. And ever since then, the journey has just been remarkable. The things that we've been able to do, the learning that we've been able to accomplish, the results that we're beginning to realize are all due in very large measure to these two extraordinary professionals, and we're deeply and profoundly grateful for your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. A follow-up question for that, before you jump in, Joe, follow-up question. Because this was before the pandemic when we started talking. What was it that you really needed help with to get started, right? Because you had some ideas about diversity, equity, inclusion, but what was it that prompted you to say, we need some help?
I feel it's a moral imperative for us to be doing this kind of work. And as a white, middle-aged male, I understood that those I lead sometimes might be suspect of intentions. And I wanted to do everything I could to build, I love that word, Reverend, that you use, capacity in individuals, because that truly is the greatest gift. But I needed help in how to build that capacity. I knew to meet people at their individual readiness levels. I knew to, capacity meant to me loving them, meeting them where they're at, setting the conditions so they could be successful. But I didn't always know from my lens what that success meant. And increasingly, it's not just about meeting the needs of our children, it's about meeting the needs of their families too. And so I needed help. And I'm grateful that you accepted the call to partner with us, because we're the better for it.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. So nice to be in the space with all of you. Thanks for the invitation. And I echo Dr. Salerno. These two are, I don't know how to describe them. They're just amazing.
We did not pay them to say
They're
that.
next level. I'm a relatively new Madison resident. I came here in 2013 with my then fiance, now wife, and 3 kids. And I think she's here tonight. She said she was. Evan. Anyway, my journey started, so prior to my role at WCO, I was executive director of a youth nonprofit. I started in December of 2013, and in spring of 2014, I heard Reverend G speak at Downtown Rotary of Madison. I think it was the launch of Justified Anger, thereabouts. And it left this incredible, everlasting impression on me that if I was ever going to make a substantive and sustainable difference in the lives of the kids that I was serving, I really needed to find a way to rewire how I live and perceive the world. You know, as a white man in America, I have these unearned privileges, and he just left this mark that I was like, whoa, I have a long way to go. And when I took the job with the Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra in 2019, we're on this journey of equity, diversity, and inclusion as an arts and culture organization. And we were, I think I met you probably through Reverend G, and I wanted to go into a partnership with Nehemiah, and I presented a 3-year consultancy relationship with Nehemiah in late fall, early fall of 2020, and this was the beginning of the pandemic, and the organization wasn't quite ready to make that commitment in the context of where existentially arts and culture, like, we were shut down. But I took that opportunity to say, well, I'm not gonna stop this momentum, and I reached out to Karen, and we had a 6-month executive coaching engagement while we were trying to figure out how to survive as a cultural organization. And then, so that was sort of and I took History for a New Day, I believe that January, so that fundamentally has changed my life in terms of giving me the tools to begin to decondition and rewire how I am perceiving the world and impacting the world, not only in WCO, but just as a community member. And then we had the good fortune as an orchestra to be one of 20 orchestras in the country to receive a $75,000 grant from the Mellon Foundation in October of 2021, and at that point, we saw a little light at the end of the tunnel that we were going to come out of COVID, and we committed to a 3-year partnership with Nehemiah. So we're in year 2 of that 3-year journey, and it's fundamentally changed how we live as an organization. We have a 5-year strategic plan. One of our 3 pillars is equity, diversity, and inclusion in a very kind of comprehensive way. We've changed our bylaws. Everything we do when we talk about our impact is through the lens of this frame. And I think as an arts and culture organization, I'm of the mind now that if we don't put equity at the front and center of what we do, then why are we an arts and culture organization? So we have a long way to go. We're just getting started, but these 2 and Nehemiah and Justified Anger has allowed us to be uncomfortable and understanding what we don't know and to pace ourselves, because this work should with WCO happen long beyond when I'm no longer with the organization. So it's a life practice, and I just am grateful to have this opportunity.
I have a quick follow-up to that. Well, maybe not quick, but so you all talked a little bit about, entering in work with us for 3 years. And so one of the things that we do that's a little bit different as an organization is, instead of offering sort of a standard A to Z curriculum, we design our work to be sort of custom fit to your environment, but we do ask you for the long-term commitment. And so can you just talk a little bit about how did that feel at first to be asked for that long-term commitment, and any adjustments that you had to make for the responsive nature of the work, and if that's changed since you've been working with us?
I wasn't scared of the 3-year commitment. I was like, well, can it be longer? What I appreciated about the approach, and it took me 14 months to really appreciate the approach, is you said, Joe, it takes about 9 to 14 months for organizations to get aligned, that not necessarily agreement of the issues, but alignment of the issues, and to begin to start to make things malleable where you can begin to think about goals. Because as you impressed upon us right away, that we live in a culture of fast solutions, set goals and accomplish them and get on to next. And you two were very disciplined to gently remind us that we're in the phase of just beginning to understand that process. So I can, now I'm in year 2, I can definitely appreciate that 3-year minimum to get an organization ready to perhaps be on its own and flex that muscle.
Thanks.
You may have heard that the role of the superintendent can sometimes be political. And one of the things that I knew going into this work is that I've seen other superintendents be run out of town as they begin to engage in this work. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay if people don't like what we're doing. There's this beauty of open enrollment, and people can go where they need to go, but I want us to plant our flag in the ground and say, this is who Mount Horeb is. We're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but we have a North Star. We have something to which we aspire to, and we took a lot of slings and arrows in the very beginning, but to me, the greater mission, the higher sense of purpose, is doing good and right by our kids, all kids. And so, Karen, you remember some lovely evenings we've had with some parents as we opened up our school district for people to talk about what is the community standard around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And quite frankly, we heard some very, very hurtful things. Very hurtful things. However, what made me so proud of Mount Horeb was the voices of those with love and compassion in their hearts. They overrode those individuals. And most of those people who are not happy, they've left the organization. And I'm okay with that. I think we have to be okay with that. And what that's actually allowed us to do is to bring in even greater talent, both in the employee sector, but also in our families. We have families who now recognize that this is a priority for us, and that they are willing to travel a little extra further every day to get their children to come to school. And the rest of them, well, they can kick rocks, because I am pleased with what we're doing. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
You know, because we've been working together for a few years, there are a lot of, I'm assuming a lot of things you've seen, changes and progress, but could you give us one example of something that you've seen in your organization that has been a change, a good change, as a result of the work? Could you give us something tangible? Like, what has this work done? Have we just come and talked to you guys and you're like, thank you, and then you went on? Or is there something tangible that you've walked away with, even as you're progressing?
Well, you're talking to an educator, and so an educator always believes that the greatest gift that they can give somebody else is a gift of learning. And we have assembled really a remarkable team of professionals through our diversity, equity, and inclusionary task force. And the biggest gift, the legacy that will be of this work, is that we've got more and more people who are wanting to participate, more and more people that want to roll up their sleeves and work shoulder to shoulder with one another in order to get the job done. We're planning a day of service, for example, on January 15th to coincide with Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. Not just to have staff members do that, but to have students who are already on, I dislike calling that a day off from school, because as you've heard, the saying before, day on, we need to really encourage our kids to work and partner with us in a day of service. And how I knew we really had started to turn the corner is you guys started to pull back a little bit. The training wheels came off a little bit, and you demonstrated to us, you had faith in us that we could move in the right direction. It's like bowling with big bumpers on the side. I knew that the bumper was going to be there. You guys were always there for us. And so that's how I knew that we were suddenly moving into a different category.
That's great. Thank you.
I have two, if that's all right.
Sure.
So we're an arts and culture-based organization. We present things. We present musical experiences, and I'm sure many of you know Concerts on the Square, which is this Madison-based 40-year tradition of bringing live classical music to downtown Madison. I think in the 40 years that it's been around, it's brought more than 6 million people to downtown. So it's probably our most visible expression of what we do every summer. And I think what I noticed, we left the square in 2020 because of COVID, and when we came back in 2022, so this is now about a year into our work together, programmatically, if you think about, if you close your eyes and I say classical music, what comes to your head? It's generally not the most diverse set of music. You know, it's 18th century dead white guys, classical music. Not only did our music director program a very rich, culturally diverse concert series, the feedback we got and the vibe we got and what people were saying about, wow, this is not your grandma's Concerts on the Square anymore. We had Ho-Chunk collaborations, we had Black Gospel collaborations, we had these local collaborations, national collaborations. Reverend G had a special appearance that summer in one of the pieces. What people were saying, like, we had one resident, one person was there, said, you know, I've been in Madison 40 years and this is the first time that I've ever been downtown and I felt like I belonged. Now, those little nuggets and data points are proof points for me that programmatically we are presenting as I think an arts and culture-based organization should, especially an orchestra in America that traditionally has had underrepresentation top to bottom. So that is a visible thing locally that we're seeing a good trajectory. Another thing we did is we, with our composer in residence, Dr. Bill Banfield, who's a African-American scholar, jazz artist, composer. We've been working with them for 2 to 3 years, being embedded in our organization, and we launched a 5-year recording project this past October where we're going to feature exclusively Black American living composers, because if you look at the sum of composers that are being played in American orchestras right now, the vast majority are dead, white, and male, and beautiful music, but we can do better. So we launched that in October at the Capitol Theater, and you're going to see us roll this out each of the next 4 years for a local transformation in how we engage with our community. But I also think it's going to make a statement to the industry that here in Madison, Wisconsin, we have an orchestra that's really taking seriously lifting the voice of these amazing artists who are living amongst us, and we'll have a compilation of up to 20 composers. So for us as an arts and culture organization, our work really is displayed in what we present and how we present it, and I would say those are our 2 examples.
Thank you.
I want to acknowledge both of you. You both talked about, well, I'm not sure if you mentioned it, Joe, but I know it's happened. Both of you have faced public scrutiny for the work that you're doing, and I want to recognize the fact that both of you have stayed the course, and that's not common. A lot of times the first time those comments come from the public, it looks like it might be a threat to the organization's reputation. A lot of us back down from the fight and try to do something else, but you all leaned into it, and I really appreciate that. So is there any advice that you can give for people who may be leading organizations or looking to do this work but maybe are fearful of the repercussions? Is there any advice you can give folks for how they might deal with that. I did not ask them that ahead of time, so.
Yeah, that's a good question. We had some interesting emails that 2022 season. I think I shared some with you. You know what gives me the I guess strength or conviction is in those moments that I've had several leaning into this work, whether it's internal resistance or external resistance, it is trying to zoom out. And I think Dr. Banfield, our composer in residence, summed it up beautifully. You can't have polish without friction. That's what he said. So when I really zoom out and I get that criticism, and my initial reaction is like, oh. I take a breath, I zoom out, and to me it's a positive data point or sign that there's friction. I can't say I've been successful at really leaning in and wanting to really challenge that. I'm sort of, ask my wife, she's here tonight, I don't like conflict that much. So it's actually really good personal practice. But yeah, it's taking that wider lens and recognizing that if we want to change systems, there's going to be friction. If it feels the same, you're not doing anything different. So that gives me that sort of strength. But it's a muscle I really need to keep flexing because it's not easy.
Not at all. Thank you.
Mission is important to me, faith is important to me, and there's something bigger than anyone who wants to complain and wail and gnash their teeth and hand wring over these kinds of things. You do what you need to do, but in the end, my mission is to do good and right by kids. And I think what I appreciate among many things from Nehemiah has been the time they gave me to get ahead of this work with my Board of Education. And by us sitting down and having some conversation around what does this mean, our board actually developed a statement that went out publicly in the newspapers. It's in fact even on our district's website. And that allowed us to cascade down to then what are our actions that you can hold me accountable to, my senior leadership team accountable to. Students call me out on it if there's something that we're not doing that we said we were going to do because we're not above it. And so in addition to mission and setting the conditions for your board and the people who oversee this work, not getting ahead of yourselves on your skis, is also to remember that you encircle yourself with good people. And good people travel in packs, don't they? And I find myself regularly just turning to people who I trust and admire and learn from. And we've been able to navigate through some things that I think had we not been purposeful about our work, we would have stopped. But the mission's too important and the people are too important. So those would be the things I guess that would come to my mind.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, thank you. We're wrapping up here, so thank you. Thankfully, you all won't have to be in the hot seat for just a moment anymore, not much longer. But I did want to just point out a couple of things because we asked you all here, not because you all were perfect, either personally, professionally, what have you, but you were progressing. And I think you've talked about that a number of times tonight. But I did want to call out some things that makes your organizations and you as leaders a little different than some of your peers. So for instance, the Mountain Horeb School District, I've been shopping around this idea to help students, parents, and school districts figure out how to deal with incidents of racism. Because what would happen is there would be an incident, the school would handle it. They couldn't talk about the punishment because of legal restrictions on privacy laws. And so basically, they would do something, it probably didn't work, and then the parents would get mad, and it was just a really horrible moment. So I was shopping this idea around every school district I could get my mouth close to their ear. I'm like, this is what you do. Make a document that will be a hypothetical document that talks about if there's a racial incident, what am I going to do, right? How are we going to handle it? Mount Horeb School District was the only one, the first one and the only one to take me up on that offer. They made this document, and their staff was able to use it to great effect. And so it's amazing to see, because it's not just, us as, just for anger doing great systems work. It also requires people who are willing to partner with us and follow Black leadership and do those things that we say, hey, here's what you need to do. And so we appreciate that. And the Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra, not only you all were one of how many that got the Catalyst grant? One of only 20. 20 in the nation. And then out of that 20, you were the only one who decided to participate in the
Inclusive Stages Initiative.
Inclusive Stages Initiative was working to make sure that your musicians were more diverse. So 75 orchestras in the nation got a grant. Part of that grant, right, is that they're going to allow you to be a part of this this effort, and only one in the nation is doing both. So thank you all for that, because so thank you all so much. Thank you for being on our panel. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for being great partners, and you're still moving in the work, even when it wasn't popular. So we appreciate that, and thank you for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Solano. It's been a joy to work with you two and to hear the impact of this work. And so now as we move along in the program, we have a special treat from Dr. G, and he's going to come up and share his reflections of the past 10 years. So let's give it up for Dr. G as he walks us through the last decade.
You know what, being here in an evening reminds me of what it used to feel like taking the history class in person. Anybody remembers taking the class in person? It feels really good to be in this space again. So listen, just take 30 seconds, because we're here because we're all partners. Will you just take a moment, stand up for like 30 seconds and just say hello to some folks around you? Oh, I remember that. All right, happy people, come on back in. Hey, come on back in, good people. So glad you got to speak. I know it took us back. Hey, listen, I just want to take a few moments to do a bit of reflecting on the past 10 years, and then just set up time for Harry, my executive vice president, to come back and talk to you as Harry about, well, maybe Harry/Leon, about just the support of our work. But before I go any further, would you please just help me give it up for tremendous staff who are on the soundboard, taking pictures. Staff, can you just stand for just a moment? Come on, Nehemiah staff, can you just stand, just put your hand up so people can see you. These folks are heroes to me because it takes something very special for a group of people to come together and get behind a vision and take the pieces that they can in order to make it come to pass. And I really, really, really appreciate that. So before I start any of my reflections, I want to just say thank you to two particular people, two people who are not here, who helped out in the early days in just really thinking about what this movement could be. One of them was a community influencer, my friend. I've known him his entire life, literally since he was 6 months old, Clean Care. He came around me and spent a significant amount of time and helped me think through this. My sister, who's also an ordained minister and a former social worker, who just kept her foot in my backside, helped me to know that it was important to maintain the integrity of the collective Black brilliance, the Black need, and the solidarity of the Black community. I appreciate her for pushing me on that. And the other person has been a friend for years, but has grown into being a true ally who really brought the academic acumen to this work to capture what I really wanted this to be and did not allow me to follow fads by jumping on the latest issue, but to stay the course. And that's my colleague, Dr. Karen Reese. Can you just please stand for just a moment? She translated whiteness for me, and I say that tongue in cheek, and because that's a construct and a mindset that's not meant to be pejorative or throwing off on white people, but she helped me to understand this is what longevity looks like. This is what the long game plan, what the long game is, and brought a lot of experience just from her work, particularly in her doctoral research. And so I really, really appreciate this. I want to take just a few minutes to talk about why and how we do what we do rather than what we've done. It's so much pressure when you've done something to get up and say, next slide, and we said this, and we had this meeting. And for the next few months, as we move into 2024, we're actually going to do that. We're going to meet with my fellow nonprofit CEOs. We're going to invite elected officials, teachers, foundation members, and to hear the various ways in which we tell our stories, we've recorded success, and we show our impact. But tonight, I didn't want to bore you with that because we actually have more food outside for you. The other stuff was just a warm-up. Honestly, just a warm-up. Please don't leave or the Jakisha will get upset. So please just know we're having other stuff out there because it really is a celebration. People want to know, hey, are you still angry? Hell yeah, I'm still angry. But St. Augustine, famed theologian and philosopher, said, hope has two beautiful daughters. Their names are anger and courage. Courage to see that they do not remain as they are. Anger to see the way things are, and courage to see that they do not remain as they are. Tomorrow morning, Cap Times is going to drop front cover article, another essay of mine, reflecting back on my life for the past 10 years. It'll probably be online late tonight or early tomorrow morning. It'll be on the newsstands tomorrow morning. And I start with this quote because I want to show that anger is and can be constructive. And we need to begin to lean into that. The other reason why I wanted you all to say hello to each other, and I just want to take a moment to really thank you all. Many of you don't realize, but that I was on my way out of Madison a decade ago. I just finished my doctoral work, and I've never applied for a job probably since I worked for Dr. Chris Sorkness here at the pharmacy school in the late 80s. But after I finished my work, the nations just came after me. And then I wrote Justified Anger, and people started becoming engaged and asked not what they could do for me, but what they need to do for themselves. I saw this community through a different lens. I saw what non-Black allyship could look like, and I had a deep change in heart. The community that I was ready to leave, people don't know this, but this was my Dear John letter. I wrote this and said, deuces, Madison. I can go someplace that's warmer, blacker, pays better. And the response of the community and the collaboration of the Black community caused me to rethink not only my work, but my place here in Madison. I didn't know at the time that this would become historic or a thing. But here it is 10 years later, and they said it wouldn't last. And so the work really continues. And so let me just show you, let's go to this next slide. If those of you who've been around me a long time, you understand that this was the kickoff. I'd written the article. People kept writing me. I didn't have enough time and energy to respond to everyone. Any of you who've ever tried to email me and have never gotten a response, excluding staff, but anyone who's ever written me and not gotten a response, I stopped reading emails after writing Justified Anger. I was getting emails about this is what you should name it. I was getting emails about this is what you should do. If you don't like it, go back to where you came from. All of those kind. I stopped. Something happened to me, and I stopped reading emails, and I got in trouble because people said by putting danger from anger in red, it looked like I was citing a riot. This is true. This happened to me, and so I was criticized for this. They weren't angry at the state of things. That's like getting mad at that siren on the first Wednesday of the month, or a real one that says the tornado's been sighted. It's like, what are you getting so loud about rather than taking cover? And so it's interesting. When I was a kid, I was young and inquisitive, and I liked things like fire. I think they call them pyromaniacs. But as a kid, I liked those kinds of things. And I, along with my cousin John, who dealt with his pyromania by becoming a firefighter, here in Madison, we set the kitchen on fire. And like real fire, like up the walls, burning the curtains and stuff like this. And for just a quick moment, we pondered, if we say something, we'll be in trouble. If we don't say anything, life's going to be really hard. We decided to wake our family up to say, hey, the house is on fire. Now, my mom was upset, and when I gained consciousness, this was the 60s, black people could spank their children. When I woke up, I realized, wow, it cost me to sound that alarm. I wanted to sound an alarm, but I wasn't sure what it would cost me. I sat on this article because Paul Fanlon asked me to write it in August, and I didn't pen it until December 9th. I sent it in while I was at LaGuardia Airport going on a meeting, and I just said whatever and hit send, not really knowing what was going to happen. But I caught flack for that issue. The next picture. I got a call from the police department saying, hey, we want to put a sign on your lawn. I said, a sign for what? And they said, we heard that you're going to have some type of rally. I said, no, I'm not having a rally. I'm just getting some people together to say why I wrote the article. They showed up with this sign saying park at the Villager Mall, and they were driving people up here. Folks, some of you were there, were walking up Badger Road like this is February 13th. It was crazy. As people were walking up saying that they wanted this auditorium on a Saturday. And let me show you that, let me just say this for just a moment. Yeah, people came from all over, and then we didn't have enough seats inside. The auditorium here seats 450 people, had 400 seats. Look what we had to do in the overflow section. Folks were on the stage. Folks, we had like 6 rows of things, and I was horrified. Because I didn't fully know what this would mean. Next slide. I asked friends to stand on stage with me. I didn't know what to call the event. It wasn't sponsored by anyone. It was just Alex G. writing an article, Alex G. having a meeting in response to an article. Jakisha, who's also preparing the food, was also my administrative assistant, said, you're crazy. I've never seen an event that wasn't sponsored by any place. So we quickly just put Nehemiah's name on it. I didn't know what to call it. Like, what do I call this thing? And Keitra Burnett and Laleta G said, you might as well call it Justified Anger, because that's what the article was called. And so the Thursday before the event, we decided to do this. My friend Joe Sweeney threw together a website for me so people could go in and say what they wanted to help with, because I didn't think that this was going to be a thing. And the community rallied, and we stood in this together. My peers stood with me. Next slide. We got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of reply cards of people wanting to help, people wanting to know, how can I help you solve your problems? How can I help you address your problems? And we had a lot of people wanting to be saviors, but no one wanting to die. Not wanting to succumb to anything. Not wanting to risk anything. And here's what we figured out, and this is the piece that I want to really leave with you. And this is what made the work tricky, but it's also why you're here. And this is something that Dr. Reese helped me with, as well as my colleague Anthony Cooper. We had this squeeze to get into this place of evidence-based practices. Dr. Reese said, well, why don't we have practice-based evidence? Why don't we figure out what works and then write theory on that rather than following theory that may not work? Following irrelevant theory is what's gotten us here. So let's find out what's going on. Let's listen to people and let's find out what's happening. And here's the gist of our work. We believed that most people that were responding wanted to do something different but didn't know what to do. Now, we can always talk about the folks that are just nuts out there and they're just doing all kinds of things. But I'm talking about the people that were showing up, wanted to do something, but they were misguided and they were misdirected. I thought if we could build relationships with people, if we could create a historical context and a class so people could understand how we got here, we could do something really, really special. We could touch people on a soulish level, so we would get to people's hearts by appealing to their intellect and their goodwill. So we created classes, we created history class, because if people understood how we got here, our non-black allies will understand that their first work was not black children, their first work was their own children. Yeah, thank you, person who did that. Because we needed someone to talk to these young children to not think that the way things have been is not the way that they're supposed to be. And so what we've decided to do, as I mentioned, to spend the next few months rolling out things that we've done with our Justified Anger Leadership Institute, the history class, the testimonials, the ripple effect studies, the court observers, the lunch and learn, so many of the things that we've done. But what I want us to really grasp and to understand that I think is the secret sauce of our work is that we created space that people who didn't look like what they thought the problem was found that they could be a part of the solution. And you walked into space like this on Monday nights and believed that you were not alone. And you sat in small groups, and introverts, I know you didn't want to do this. You sat in those small groups and you're able to bare your souls, and you're able to lean in and learn and to understand. Unless you understood how this was impacting you, you'd never be a part of the change. You let us mess with your minds and your heart and our history and your workplace and all of these other sanctimonious spaces inside you, and you trusted us to lead you into light that helped you to understand that we don't have systemic racism because black people are screwed up. We have systems that have screwed us up, and we don't need you to commiserate with us. We need you to help break these systems down. That's what we really needed. That's at the core of all of our programs. And so, listen, systemic racism was instituted and perpetuated due to a pervasive thought that it was of benefit to the general society. It wasn't like a bunch of people put on sheets and said, let's just go kill up a good part of the country. There was a belief that this would make society better, and you, as white people, would benefit if we keep certain people, if we annihilated certain people, if we raped and owned certain people, it would help you economically. And that's how they maintained it systematically, because the thought was we're going to tease you with power and significance. This won't be fixed until we understand that systemic racism hurts everyone. That we cannot be a world-class society if your children can't talk to their neighbors. We can't have an all-whatever table at home and expect our kids to become the United Nations at school. We talk about places of worship being the most segregated place and time in the week. I don't believe that, nor do I quote that anymore. I think the dinner table is. Because it looks like us, it sounds like us, and we don't train people to really, our children, how to mingle. And so unless each person who is a beneficiary of this systemic reality accepts the ownership of it, nothing will change. And so our work is to continue to inspire you, to call you together, to send you out. It is to catapult you into a sense of change, because decency alone won't get this done. And so the reason why you've got to commit to 3 years or these other kinds of processes is because we want you to understand, unless you feel this deeply and understand that this is hurting everyone, you won't move and change. For CEOs who are talking about DEI initiatives and their DEI representatives to whom they've relegated all this responsibility, but they do not have a friend that looks like them, they perpetuate the problem. So we say to the superintendents, to the Joe Lanuses, you got to get to meet people. You got to get to know people. You got to lean into these relationships that you have, because we have people trying to fix systemic racism, and they don't know people who have been disadvantaged by these systems. And we have to understand that we're really all in this together. When we change systems, it starts with the individual, who then experiences a realization in their own transformation. And then that individual understand that if we work together, we can be stronger. But then those individuals that are partnering begin to realize, wait, we're part of organizations. Can we bring those organizations together? Can we leverage our relationships? And then pretty soon you have school districts, because the superintendent went through something. You have the entire judiciary committee of the state of Wisconsin, because 4 judges went through the class. You have organizations going through it because their board chair people have gone through it. And unless it affects us deeply, we can't be a part of systemic change. Systemic change looks like this. When I talked to my friend Joe Lanus about getting connected with us to do this work, we talked about the Dr. Bill Banfields. We talked about Leotha and Tamara Stanley. We talked about people being on the stage. But I said, Joe, when I go to concerts on the square, which I love, I'm a proud board member of Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra, but I say to him, I don't want a black stage and all the white people and vendors are making money all around the Capitol. Let's surround this thing. If we want blackness, let's make it black, including who gets paid. Systemic change is not just putting us on stage. Systemic change is about making room for us to stand in places of power. Because if you listen to our singing and eating our food and experiencing and supporting our businesses, that makes us a part of the downtown community. Because if you take all the money out of downtown, guess what? There ain't no downtown. And so don't just invite us to the parties, you all. Invite us to the planning of the parties. Let us be the event planner. Let us set the themes. That's an example of systemic, and Joe is working towards that. Joe and the board were working towards that. But for us, that's what we mean with systemic change. We don't want to be just in the room. We want to be in the mix, because we believe that Madison is better with us at the table. And unless our partners and would-be allies understand that we're only better together, then we won't be better together or apart. And so we want you to lean in with us over the next few months as we talk about, as we roll out these things. We're planning an event where Dr. Reese gets to talk about her data, and Harry gets to talk more about what it is to lead change and what it is to be able to help people to think systemically about change. We want you to lean in and learn, but rather than coming and just giving you a report on what we've done as if it's our job, we want to ask you, have you done enough? Have you learned enough? Have you educated yourself enough? Have you donated enough? Have you affiliated enough? Because that's the work that still needs to happen for us and in our community. I also want to say that Cap Times is dropping, I mentioned this earlier, a commemorative story. I want you to take a look at it and just ask yourself, do I see myself in it? Does this make sense? Are we making action? Are we getting traction? Because we want our legacy to be that Madison is better because we are all working together. It's easy to just accept this as our plight, but it takes guts to really believe in systemic change that can undo the history and the legacy of systemic racism. And so I am so grateful for a community that allows me to write and speak and spew and spout and still celebrate my work. I don't know how the response was to the Joker and Batman when who's the guy from One Flew Over the Cuckoo? Jack Nicholson said, this town needs an enema. I love a community that lets me say this town needs an enema and then still let me write a 10-year anniversary report afterwards. I appreciate the fact that I push this community hard, but I feel respected, I feel seen, I feel heard, I feel followed, I feel networked, and I'm very proud to do this work in a community that's given so much to me and my family, and I'm very proud to be able to do this with each of you. We have a lot more work to do. Harry's going to come up and close us out to explain how that works, but thank you so much for being here tonight and being a part of this systemic change that we want to bring.
So, just going to leave you with a few numbers here. And one of the things that I am known for is promptness. So let's see if I can do this in 3 minutes, but still touch your heart. Let's see if we can do that, okay? All right, so first, you've gotten these in your seats. We got little cards here, so I'm going to explain some of those numbers to you. So first, 7. Think about this. Imagine you are a black woman, you're talented, you have an entry-level job in your work, you haven't been developed. You go to a leadership institute, and then later on you become a director of the program you were working for. Imagine you're at a graduation for a leadership institute, and the leader who you respect in the city says, you are gifted, you're talented, and he gives you one word, and it strikes a chord in your heart. That's our Leadership Institute, Justified Anger's Leadership Institute. We've had 7 cohorts go through that. And really, almost, I think, 75 people have gone through that, participated, and are growing from executives to entry level and everybody in between. 10,000, over 10,000. Imagine you have to go to court. Never fun. Imagine you have to do that. You have to talk to the judge through a food slot. And you're trying to explain why you need to be treated humanely through a little window. That was the image that our court observers helped bring to the attention to say, hey, during COVID, maybe there's a different way we could do this. So an idea that started with something as simple as, hey, it really helps people when there are others there to support them when they go to court. Our volunteers ran with that and have been running with that, and we've witnessed observed over 10,000 court cases. It's amazing. Since the launch of Justified Anger, we've had over 5,000 people who can now say they're alumni of the course. It's a lot. 1,013. That's how many teachers have taken the Black History for a New Day course. Just imagine how many kids they can reach as they go along that equity journey. But the most important number there when it comes to impact is 1, and that 1 is you. All the things that we talked about here, I'll tell a quick story. 2020, Dr. Karen Reese and I are this, you know how you say you're trying to keep your head above water? At this point, we were trying to develop gills, okay? We were getting requests for people to come have us do the work that we talked about with Mount Horeb and the WCO. And what happened was we barely had enough time to even send them the proposal. And Dr. G goes, well, how can we get some more work? We're like, we need some help. And because of donors, because of you, people who support our work, we were able to hire people to help us out. And the impact that you see, those 5,000, that 1,013, that 10,000, that 7, it's because we had people believe in us enough to support us with it. And so on the back, oh yeah. Yeah, give yourself a round of applause. On the back, you'll see that 1 is that you've always been our donors who support and sustain our work. You've always been the lifeblood of Nehemiah. So we're giving you an opportunity today to show that support. Donors who give $100 a month or the equivalent or greater can become our Nehemiah Heartbeat Society. You can use the QR code to donate. And so if you see our work as the expression of your values, if your heart is what we're doing with our hands, then join us today. And you can either give digitally, electronically, or you can give at the table. We have staff out there who will be more than happy to take whatever form of tender you have. We don't discriminate, okay? So as you leave, we have more food. We have some food. We also have some shirts if you want to feel it, you want to show people that, hey, I was at that party. I know these people. You can wear a T-shirt or a sweatshirt. So check that out at the table as well. Thank you so much. I owe you 60 seconds, but we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. Have a great night.